So it's time for what? The cinematic experience of the year, Dune. And my verdict, this movie is excellent on so many different levels. So briefly, Dune is the story of Paul Atreides, a young man born into a great destiny beyond his understanding. The trouble begins when his father accepts stewardship over the planet Arrakis. This planet just so happens to contain the most valuable substance in the world, a spice that can both prolong human life and accelerate human thought. And this film is excellent for both people who have read the book and who are new to the Dune experience. And the reason for this is the amount of care, dedication, love, everything that the director, Denis Villeneuve, gives into creating a world that feels real and investing us into its characters. So the first thing to note about this movie is that it's been divided into two parts. And the reason for this is to give viewers the same experience, excitement, satisfaction that readers got from the book. And there's just, again, the thing I most appreciate about this film is the director. So I want to start by looking at a few characters that struck out at me, and not a single performance was wasted, in my opinion. And we'll begin with the Atreides family. So Timothée Chalamet's performance as Paul Atreides I thought was excellent. And because the film is divided into two parts, he does a great job of kind of showcasing this young man in training who's kind of thrust into manhood, right? So his whole life, he's been kind of preparing to become a leader. And now the time has come, right? Like suddenly. And so now he has to figure out how he's supposed to sort of occupy this position and survive at the same time. So I thought this was a great introduction to his character. And it's going to be very exciting to see how he grows moving into the second half of the novel. The second character that, really struck out at me was his mother, played by Rebecca Ferguson. She plays the Lady Jessica. So she plays his mother, but also her job is to guide her son into fulfilling this great destiny. And so you kind of feel the tension she has in trying to protect her son, but at the same time, the high stakes, right? Like he has to survive, and not only survive, but her son, he has to become a leader, and not just for their survival, but for the survival of the world as a whole. And the final character in the Atreides family that really just struck out at me was Oscar Isaac's character as the Duke. So he was picture perfect, but also he does a great job of sort of contrasting what his sort of family is about in terms of morals and values, especially in comparison to the other groups that we will see throughout the film. And his downfall is that he gravely underestimates the greed of others. And through his character, you kind of get glimpses into who Paul could become. And so I thought he was very effective in his time on screen. And this family as a whole, this had to be the best looking family I've seen on they look like they could have been a real family. I don't know, it was just very pleasing to the eye. The other thing I really appreciated about the characters is the way they're kind of all weaved in together. So the film does a great job of building character relationships and also investing us into the characters individually. And so a few key secondary characters come to mind. The first is Josh Brolin's character as Gurney Halleck. So his job is to train Paul to become a fighter, right? And for the time he's on screen, you can understand that he's very good at his job. And so you kind of trust that Paul will be very good at defending himself. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of figures out where his place in this new world is after the fall of the Atreides family. So he's in it for a short time, but he makes that impact. The second character that really struck out at me was the Beast Raban, played by Dave Bautista. And he is just spot on, right? And not just in appearance, in makeup or in the setting, but you really get the sense that this guy, it's any means necessary, and I can't wait to see more of him. And he just fit. The time he was on screen, he was quite terrifying, right? He really looked like someone who would kill you at a moment's notice. The next character that I think did a great job of building up that anticipation for the second half of this movie is Javier Bardem's character as Stilgar. So he is a native of Arrakis, and he's basically just sick and tired of watching these colonizers come in and kill everybody and strip their planet of everything that it's worth. And so watching him kind of rise to a position of power and also look out for Paul will be really, really fun, I think. So Javier Bardem, like, again, the time that he was on screen, he has presence not just as a leader, but you get the sense that he really kind of sees the potential that Paul has moving forward. Another character that wasn't in it that long was Zendaya's character, Shania. And her character does two things. First, she's very important to the second half of the film. And also, she kind of gives us a glimpse into what Paul is going through in terms of his visions, and kind of like, he's kind of suffering with a lot because he keeps seeing her in his dreams, but he doesn't know what it means. And he has quite violent, flash forwards, right? Like, he keeps seeing violence time and time again. And so her function was not just to, get us again excited to see what role she's going to play, but also get inside his head and see, like, he's really someone who's not doing that well. And as the movie goes on, you realize why. And finally, there was a character that she was in it for a very short period of time as well. This was Charlotte Rampling's character as the Reverend Mother. And so she was responsible for training Paul's mother, the Lady Jessica. And I really enjoyed the relationship between the secondary characters and the main characters, because Charlotte Rampling, you can't even see her face, but she makes an impact, and she kind of reinforces or emphasizes Lady Jessica's role as a guide and not just as a mother. So again, I really enjoyed the presence that the characters had and also their relationship to each other, because it's kind of a mechanism for investment, right? Like, as a viewer, you're kind of wondering, like, you kind of want these characters to come back, right? You're kind of wondering, well, what happened to this guy? What happened to this guy? What happened to this guy? So I thought it was a very, very clever way of, leaving you wanting more. Before I talk about the storyline, I just want to talk about the villain, the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, and he is played by Stellan Skarsgård, and he is just spot on as a villain. So in the book, he's quite devious, and in past sort of makes of this movie, in past movies, he's kind of a caricature, like it was hard to take him seriously. But in this film, he's a proper villain, right? Not just in terms of his appearance, but just in terms of his dialogue as well, right? So by kind of turning him into a proper villain and not a caricature, you kind of see how much is at stake. So the Baron lost stewardship over Arrakis, and this is a planet that he's made a lot of money off of. And this planet is very imperative to his family name. And so you kind of are able to get invested in the storyline as well, and not just the characters themselves and seeing, like, how evil can this guy really be. And so I thought it was really effective, because not just in terms of, the storyline, but in terms of contrasting, like, the different groups in the movie, right? So time and time again, the movie takes us back and forth through different groups. And so when you compare the Harkonnen to the Atreides, and at one point they take us to the Sardaukar planet. So in order for the Baron to get back this planet that he lost, he has to find other people to sort of align with. And as you're going through the different groups and the different sort of planets, I guess you could say, the contrast is so stark. And one of my favorite scenes was when we see the Sardaukar. So they're considered, like, quite vicious, and on their planet you see men being drained of blood and all this stuff. But even as someone who hasn't read the book, like, you can appreciate the contrast, because again, it gets you invested into this bigger world. When you're seeing how different each of these groups are, it makes you wonder, right? Because it seems like war is inevitable. Like, there's no way that all of these people can live in harmony for much longer. So I appreciated their take on the Baron in relation to the general storyline, right? This planet that's kind of being stripped of all its resources, its people kind of being exterminated, and kind of seeing how that develops moving forward. So what this does is it creates, again, a sense of urgency, because you can kind of feel this tension that's been bubbling for some time. The other point to note is the strategic use of characters in this film. And we'll start with the first sort of noticeable change in the movie, which was the gender swap of Liet Kynes. And so I thought this was quite clever, because what it does is that, first of all, it doesn't change the film at all in terms of like the essence of the book, but it also accelerates the plot, right? It gets the main characters to where they need to be. And the same could be said for Jason Momoa's character, who plays Duncan Idaho. Like, he's not in it for a long time, but for the parts that he's in it, he's used very well, again, to get our main characters to where they need to be. And also, they have enough presence and enough interaction with the main characters that you get the sense that, you know, you kind of feel the sense of urgency, right? Like, you kind of feel that Paul and his mother, like, if they don't get to somewhere safe, something really bad is going to happen. So again, I really appreciated the strategic use of characters in this film and kind of building up that sort of like, how is this movie going to end? So the only cons I would say to this film would be the pacing, perhaps, because this film kind of takes its time in terms of getting you settled into the world and getting you to get used to the different groups, how they operate, what they look like, the different sort of philosophies, what is this about? So this film is like a building block to the next film. And for that, you could feel maybe that the movie was a bit slow. So it really depends on you as a viewer. But overall, I thought it was great. I thought it was excellent. And I appreciated, again, the direction and the fact that they were more concerned with creating a film that, you know, kept the essence of the book and not just, you know, a means to an end. Like, here's a book and we can do a bunch of action stuff. And you didn't feel the movie was rushed at all. You know, like, okay, we'll worry about the second movie when it comes. But for now, let's just end it where we feel like the movie ended appropriately. Like, you did get a sense where you're like, where is this going to end exactly? But I think it ended where it was supposed to end. But again, the amount of care and love and sort of dedication that went into really creating a film that was true to the book and giving viewers that experience. Like, you could tell that he was a fan. And so for that, you really appreciate the time that was taken. And so there are no cheap thrills in this movie. Like, this movie is not a cheap thrill, like, ride. Like, it really is asking you to be patient, to invest, to kind of pay attention. You might have to watch it twice. And yeah, I thought it was excellent. You guys let me know what you think, and until next time.